Hi, all of you are able to see me. You are able to hear me. You're also able to see my screen.
Yes, yes, yes.
Yes, sir. Yes.
Okay, wonderful. That's great. So let's move ahead. So this is what has happened. This is third session as part of our CPD initiative, continuing professional development initiative. Just give me a second. Yes, so we have been talking about mock interviews and how to go about cracking interviews for a talent acquisition position. Largely, that is what we have been doing. This is third in the series. So anybody who has not attended first two, remember as part of your CPD membership, this would be available in session recordings, right? So if you just go where you have gone to register for your session for CPD, you can just go and you can click there and you can also see as part of the session recording. There are two sessions that have happened so far, and this is what has happened so far. Now, note there are four sessions in this series. So first one, generic question is done, technical questions are done. Now we are getting into little more details in terms of a basic level of TA questions and advanced level of recruitment or talent acquisition questions. That is something that would happen next week, right? So what was discussed in generic questions? A quick recap of what we did there. We answered questions which are more common. You see them all across, something which is specific to questions like tell me a bit about yourself, what are your strengths or hobbies outside of work, how do you get into talent acquisition, how would your previous employer describe you, why are you interested in this industry, why do you want to work for our company, what skills make you qualified for this role, what are the steps of your talent acquisition process, how do you stay up to date with hiring trends, how can you help our company find better candidates. These were first set of generic questions which is done in the first session of cracking talent acquisition interviews or mock interviews for talent acquisition. That is something that we have discussed. The second session was generic questions. So where we discuss these questions: what do you understand by competency-based interviewing or BEI? How do you use BEI? How would you judge somebody's leadership skill in an interview? How would you ensure good interview to candidate selection ratio? How will you improve your current hiring process? This is something that we have also answered as part of the second session on talent acquisition. Now today there is a third session. So again, as I said, anybody who has missed it and you find the first two set of questions important, and if you're appearing for a talent acquisition interview, or even if you're conducting, right, either way, right, you can go about going through that more in terms of appearing. And you can get a sense of, we had some interesting discussions, interesting perspective. There are a lot of sub questions asked by participants in last two sessions, which showed their involvement levels, which was very, very appreciative. And, it was a great experience for me as a facilitator as well. But largely, I think today we would be talking about session 3, which is getting slightly deeper into more into talent acquisition. If you see, it is all these questions so far are either generic in nature or technical, but from a technical perspective, larger in terms of touching the role, not getting deeper into it. So when we talk about basic TA questions and advanced TA questions, that is something that that would come across, and we would be working on that. So these are some of the questions which are more of a basic talent acquisition question. This is what we will be discussing today. What do you look in for a candidate? What do you look for in a candidate? What is your greatest accomplishment as a talent acquisition specialist? Have you used any applicant tracking system? What is your experience with online recruiting? What resources do you use to find qualified candidates? How do you prepare for interviews with candidates? What steps do you take to help with the onboarding process? Tell me about a time you missed out on a great candidate. What should you have done better? how do you stay connected with candidates? What screening processes are you familiar with? These are a set of questions which are more technical. I would say these are all technical questions specific to recruitment, but we are getting deeper in terms of the area. And then we would have a set of advanced questions as well, which would be taking next week. But these are the 10 questions that we would be discussing today, right? Before I start, any doubts, any questions, anyone? Yes, Dhruvesh, please go ahead and ask your question.
Yes, but as you said right now, you will be explaining us, correct, for the particular each and every question. So
Yes.
my concern means I want to ask about applicant tracking system. What does that mean?
Right. So this is already part of the question. So I will be coming to it as we move ahead in the session, Dhruvesh, right?
Okay, no problem. Thank you, sir.
Okay. Great. So yes. So let's start then. Any other question? Anyone? Anybody would like to ask? Any doubts? Any questions? Anybody would like to ask? Okay, great. So let's start with this. First question, what do you look for in a candidate, right? I think that is very, very important question. And normally this can be answered in so many different ways, right? So let me tell you what would be an ideal way of answering it. But do remember there are different management practices, different ways of evaluating answers, but something that suits different tastes, or I would say that, different recruiters, how they would go about judging you. I think this one of the safest answer would be to talk about the job role and the candidate, right? Do not necessarily only talk about candidate, because I've seen people getting into the one thing that I would definitely check in a candidate is the communication skill and the confidence. And I would like to know A and B and C. I think these are all okay questions, but if you can make it much more job specific, then it would make a lot of sense. So the key element here is that you first talk about the roles that you have hired for. So I have largely hired for IT positions in my organizations, and this has been specific to software developers, senior software developers, team leader and assistant project managers, and sometimes project managers as well. And when we are largely looking into it, I think one key element is to understand what the role holds and what are the key deliverables. And because most of the people have already been through the technical rounds, they seem to be fitting technically. It is more of a cultural fit that I have to go about seeing. So one key element that I look at is whether the person is in line with our values, in value our culture and the behavior that we see at our workplace. We have a very, very updated interview evaluation form. And largely when I'm looking for in a candidate, I'm looking for the competencies and the skills that are reflected upon in the job role, right? That helps him or her do the job role well. And that is what I am evaluating on. So I purely go by the structure, which is specific to the organization, specific to the department, specific to the job role. I have already met, mostly what I do is as part of pre-preparation for the interview, I already interact with the project managers and the tech team in terms of what their inputs are and what they feel about the candidate, so that I have some inputs. I'm better prepared for the interview. I also understand what kind of work it involves in terms of interaction, in terms of engagement, in terms of client facing, in terms of team involvement, in terms of whether it's individual contributing role or not. And once I have this entire overview, I think I'm very clear with what the outcomes the organization wants me to look for in a candidate. And that is what I go about implementing in an interview. And yes, so asking questions specific to these skills and competencies really help. And my track record in terms of being able to hire candidates who have been able to perform well at a later stage in the organization has been really good, right? Does it make sense, right? If you see I'm not going by. So I have heard while conducting or being part of panel of various interviews, I have seen people give vague, strange answers to this question as well. For example, I have heard somebody say that I'm really good with this, and when a candidate enters, I'm able to gauge them well. I get to know whether a candidate is a good fit or not in 30 seconds or first 1 minute of the interview. These are all disaster answers, right? I go by gut, I go by sense, I go by, no, you go by evidence. You do not go by gut, you go by evidence, right? You do not go by feel, you go by evidence, right? Because understand what happens when a recruiter goes by gut. So imagine if somebody enters and I feel doesn't look like a good fit, or when the person answers the first question and I'm like, it doesn't look like he fits the bill. Then next 15 minutes in the interview, I would just be wanting to justify my initial assessment to be correct. How can I go wrong? I'm good, right? So how I cannot go wrong, right? So so that's a very, very bad trait. So you have to then go about looking for something that fits well, and this would be an apt answer. Does it make sense? Any doubts, any questions here? Anybody would like to ask before I move ahead to the next question? Okay, so next question is, what is your greatest accomplishment as a talent acquisition specialist? Now, I'm sure people who are working or who have various levels of experience, and this is also true for any HR role. What is your greatest accomplishment as in your career, or what are your achievements? This is a fair question to ask. Here it is more role specific. So when you talk about talent acquisition specialist, I think it's very, very important that you reflect something good that you have done at the workplace, right? Whatever you feel. And this is one of very commonly asked question in any interview, actually. So you can expect this in various forms, right? So I will make it very, very TA specific or a recruitment specific, recruiter specific. How do we go about answering that? But largely when we have a question like this being asked, I think you really need to have done something. And just in case, let's say the job opportunity did not involve you, then you have to probably think of how things actually happen and what could have been done better, and probably include it in your answer so that it sounds good, right? So probably the way to answer would be that one of the key challenges that our organization was facing was a very high offer drop rates, right? And we were selecting and we were making offers, and a lot of people were not joining them, right? So this was a challenge, and somehow we were not finding answers. So then what I started doing was, for the positions that I was hiring, I started looking at people who were already there in the organization and they were performing, and they had spent more than 1 year in the job role. And I started mapping that back to the source, right? Of where did we get these people from, which companies we got these people from, which colleges we got these people from, what experience level we got these people from, what gender we got these people from, what location, what cities we got these people from. And I did a basic level of analysis in terms of being able to make up my mind. And I also prioritize in terms of looking for these people, or telling the vendors who were looking for people to be a little more specific in terms of the profile of people whom they are looking for. And once I brought this change, we were able to see offer drop rates go down drastically, especially for the designations that I was hiring for. And once I saw this working well, I made a presentation to the entire team, and it was so wonderful to see the team not struggling hard, but being able to meet their deadlines and targets, and to be able to reduce this last minute surprises of candidates not showing up, or offer drop rates not being matching, right? So this is an example. This is a very good example in terms of how somebody who has worked in talent acquisition has gone about solving a problem. So remember, accomplishment is not about only meeting a target, closing a position. It is, I'm not saying it is not, right? It is also about solving a problem. And this can be done even while achieving what you have done. And that is what needs to be talked more. So for example, again, I have heard answers like, oh, I have, there were tough timelines to meet, how recruitment and talent acquisition is, and there is, there is always difficulty in terms of being able to source enough people and meet the deadlines. However, the way I worked was that I would work on references, I would this, that, and, most of the time I have gone about meeting my target. And in fact, I have close positions. I have held others also in terms of, and that is my biggest accomplishment. So you're focusing only on target, focus on the journey of achieving that target, right? Break it down, because if this is about your accomplishment, if it is about you, there is so much to speak to. Why do you need to rush up or hush up and answer? You need to give details which are very, very specific. Your approach, what you did, how you did, what you achieved, how did you achieve this? All this coming together really helps, right? It really helps, right? So I think this is also an important element that we have to understand, that while answering questions like this, and this question is true for any role, right? What are your biggest achievement in your last job, right? Whatever your last job was, right? If it was of HR journalist, talk about policies that were not working well, or talk about talk about attritions or absenteeisms, or anything that problem that organization was facing, and what proactive step from your end, right, helped organizations solve that problem. And just in case if there has not been any proactive step, all of you are working, if all of you are working right now, then start taking this element in, right? Remember, what we do for the organization, right, is not extra work for us. We are working for our own experience and our own exposure. So we should try, we should make a workplace not exceedingly experimental. However, we should try to bring in the element of proactiveness, solution thinking in terms of our current role, so that we are able to bring we are able to expose ourselves to facing challenges and issues and solving them, and at the same time talk about it with our future employers. So that is very important, right? Does that answer your question? Any doubts here in the second question? Any doubts with the second question? Anyone? Any suggested iterations you see and you would like to ask that on this? Any doubts, anyone? Okay, so let me move to the next question, which is, have you used any application tracking system? So understand that in recruitment, ATS is an important software. And just like if you're looking for a sales job, if you work on a CRM, it's an added advantage. So if you worked on, let's say, Salesforce, or if you work on Lead Square, or if you worked on maybe Zoho CRM, then it makes sense, because you have worked on that, you're aware of technology, you're not still working on Excel sheets alone. So this is a question which is more, so you cannot actually go about lying in this question. Either you have worked or you have not worked, right? So what is an applicant tracking system? Let's understand that. So applicant tracking system is largely a software or technology which gets associated in your hiring process to be able to track applications and map applications, filter applications, schedule applications, update statuses, in fact, inform candidates. So right from when the profile a candidate applies to a time when an offer is made, if you are able to track the entire journey, that is what an applicant tracking system is doing, right? And there are various applicant tracking system. For example, Zoho People has its own, it's an Indian company, very good company, which has its own applicant tracking system. Then you have Bamboo HR. I'm sure you would have heard of that. There is something called Job White, which is there in terms of, there are endless, like Workday also would have its own module. There is applicant stack, which is there. There is Bullhorn incorporation, which is there. There is smart recruiters as applicant tracking system. There is something called Jazz HR, which is there. So you have various applicant tracking systems, and largely, so just like, let's say you're using Gmail right now, or you're using and then you have a Rediff mail or a Hotmail account, you can figure it out. So the user interface may change, but largely the objective remains the same, right? So if you have not used an applicant tracking system, you have to first tell them that no, you have not used, but at the same time tell them that you have gone about seeing features, etc., of that would works, and given a chance, you would be able to work that across. So for example, if something like this comes up, then you tell them that no, actually the current organization that I'm working for is a growing organization, and we do have leave management, etc., and a CRM, etc., in place for the sales team and for the HR team, but we do not have applicant tracking system, also because part of the major part of that is outsourced to other organizations in terms of the hiring. But I have always been very curious in terms of learning, and I'm part of the CPD membership, where I have been, and you do have in your CPD membership, if you go to the HR Flicks, I'm sure that there would be something on applicant tracking system and how to use job sites or something on that would be, I'm sure you would find something interesting there. So tell them that I have gone about watching few videos and going through some components in terms of what applicant tracking system is all about. And applicant tracking system largely helps through technology us to track, trace, filter applications in a wonderful manner. A lot of time is saved, because a lot of applications that we receive is necessarily not fitting in, and by automatic filters, if we are able to only get people who are fitting into the role at with the basic criteria level of, let's say, experience level, etc., that's wonderful. And in terms of how to go about scheduling interviews, and what is the status, and what are the reminders, and whom to track, and whom to call, and whom to schedule with, all this becomes very, very easy, because applicant tracking system is there with us through our journey from the time we receive a profile to the time an offer is made. At the same time, I am really good with technology. I find myself up to date with what's happening across. So, whether it's using tools in Excel or advanced Excel, or using pivot tables to sort data out, etc., or it is about making presentations, or it's even if it's about let's say using job sites to look for candidates, or if it is about using apps, like name few apps, whatever you think that you are good at in terms of anything, whether it's for personal wellness, or you can go about naming few, and then also at given a chance, I think I would be really be able to catch this up, because I don't see anything difficult. It's simple, it is clickable. It is something that so maybe a week of time that is given to me, I'm sure I would be able to understand applicant tracking system, and absolutely be able to work on it, right? So in case if you are not exposed to that, then this is what you are answering, right? If you're exposed to that, then after the initial element of applicant tracking system, that what it does, etc., I think you tell them that I have worked on Zoho People, I worked on Bamboo HR, and there are different modules to it, and I really like the recruitment module, and my exposure to this module is more because I was largely interacting with vendors, etc., and we were receiving profiles, and that filtering has had to happen, and I set up filters and tools X and Y and Z like this, so if you have exposure, then you have enough element to talk about it, isn't it, right? That is what they want to know, right? So do not answer in single line statements like, no, I have not worked on applicant tracking system, sorry, right? Tell them that you're not able to work, but you have updated yourself with what applicant tracking system is, and because you are being good with technology, you should be able to work with little exposure that is given once you join. And if you have worked, then you tell them, yes, I have worked. But then again, explain that what feature, etc. Talk a bit about it, so that they get convinced that, okay, this person knows it well, right? Does that answer everybody's question? Any doubts, any question here? Dhruvesh, anything you'd like to ask on this? Anybody else? Any doubts, any questions? Okay.
I think you made it very clear.
Okay, great. Now coming to the next question, what is your experience with online recruiting? I think that is a very, very fine question to ask, right? So, and especially in last 2 years, a lot has evolved, right? So tell them that, you know, last 2 years has been quite a revelation for all of us, because so much has happened and everything is happening online. In fact, forget recruitment, even the work is happening online. But yes, because we are not meeting people, we have to be extra cautious and careful. At the same time, we have to make sure that the process really runs smoothly. So I think apart from working on tools like various ATS like Bamboo HR or Zoho or JobWhite, etc., I have exposure to other tools as well. In terms of Naukri or Monster or Times or Shine or whichever job sites you are using or you have heard of, or in your country, whatever is popular, right? So yes, or you know, LinkedIn for example, as a tool where, you know, premium accounts and job postings, etc., it would come. Or if you look at apps, like in India, one app is getting popular called Hirect, right? Similarly, if there are some apps which are getting popular, which are connecting candidate to company, talk about that, you know. So this is all that I'm exposed to. But one element of online recruitment where I really worked and improved it upon was how the selection process in an online or through an online medium was being done, right? And this is largely interviews, right? Because I see initially when we started scheduling a lot of interviews, people would not turn on their camera, they would join through their mobiles, they would be sitting in strange areas, etc. So one thing that I always do when I'm interacting with participants, or before, in fact, even when I'm interviewing them, I ensure that I give them a call and I talk to them and I set expectations in terms of what kind of ambience and atmosphere should be there for this interview to happen, right? So I set the expectations, right? And this is communicated through mails, through WhatsApp, or through a call, where I tell them that the interview would be for anything between 15 to 20 minutes or 30 minutes. And it's important to find a safe place you're able to sit without much of disturbance. Sit in an area where probably you are on a laptop, where you're able to work that across with a good network connection. Also, you know, it's important that you are in a lit area so that we are able to see you, put this across. We will be also recording your interview for all our internal tracking as part of our internal process. Also, you know, I would we would conduct an interview where we would be discussing about your role, about profile, about this, about that, and we would be about your achievements and about your expectations, and also in terms of how you fit into the role. And this would largely be a non-technical interview, or if it is a technical interview, then it would be a mix of a technical and an HR interview, where the project manager or project lead would be there, and 3 people would be there in this interview. 2 of them would be from the operations team and the product team, and I would be there from the HR team, and I would be so this is what you can expect, but ensure that this is how the interview happens. So it's very, very important that you know, by setting these expectations with the candidate, we could increase the interview ease as well as interviewers experience, right, which was very, very important. And this solved a big problem, because it saved time, it saved effort, it saved energy, because a lot of times candidates really do not care about a lot of things, right? Like, for example, formal dressing and a lot of other things. And once they're told about this, and when they are put, I mean, it's not necessary formal dressing, but it should not absolutely be informal. So you tell them that you can be dress smart, right? So terms like this. So whatever you want to put across, and then tell them that, you know, because of this, we were able to not only save time, but also be able to, you know, project better candidate experience and judge people in a better manner. And I think apart from having experience all these areas, this is one problem that so what are again you're doing? You're again talking about a problem that you have solved. So your experience is about delivering things and improving things. And that is what any company would want, right? A lot of people don't do that. Array, interview ho raha hai, let it happen, right? But why? Why is it important that you improve this, right? So somebody took that step, right? So if this is part of your answer, and if you have actually done that, then it's something that you should speak about, right? And should include in terms of, so you have already talked about softwares or applicant tracking systems and apps and other things that are there. So that is one part of online recruitment, and the other part is the process of selection, etc. And even if it is about, let's say, conducting online tests, something that had not happened before and people were coming, like, for example, aptitude or anything, then how did you go about doing that? Whom did you spoke to? How did you look for vendors? How did you make those questions which are specific to your criterias being uploaded and the web proctored examination, so that nothing else works, or you know, all that is something that you can go about adding, and then probably, you know, also talk about interviews. So that would be a good way of answering that, right? Does that answer the question? Any doubts, any question here anybody would like to ask? Okay, anyone, anything anybody would like to ask? Thanks, Tati. Thanks, Farooq. Okay, great. So now we move to the next question, which is the 5th question out of 10. What resources do you use to find qualified candidates? Great, good question. So again, this is again a basic level of TA questions. What do you do? So tell them all that is normally done. But I think the idea is to have something more sprinkly in terms of how you go about answering it, something that catches attention, something that looks attractive, something that stands out. I think that is very, very important, right? So tell them that, you know, I have worked extensively on job sites actually, or I have worked with vendors, but at the same time, you know, while working with vendors, I have also myself worked on various job sites. So, so job site is one set of area where we go about looking for candidates or doing job postings largely. Then we have walk-ins. That is something that I have been part of, where we do advertise and we make people walk into our place directly. We have done job fairs where, you know, we have gone about hiring for 2 to 5 years experience or 0 to 5 years experience, where we have managed high crowds. Or if I have gone to campuses and I've driven campus recruitments for certain positions where I have interacted with college authorities, negotiated salaries, decided on which day our company would go in terms of placements, and then you know, do pre-placement talks and you know, tying up with that, or maybe tying up with training institutes to help us find qualified candidates, or you know, if it is about employee referrals. So whatever you have done of, so basically if you have used various tools which are technology tools, including sites and apps, or if you have gone about interacting with you know, vendors or newspaper, doing newspaper ads, or you have gone about doing job fairs and campus hirings, or whatever you have gone about doing, and talk about an area where you have specialized. For example, if you have specialized in campus hirings, then you talk more in terms of that, because that is your specialist area. So tell them it is about colleges, it is about, you know, a keen look in terms of who the candidates are and what experience and what level of expertise that they carry. And also, rather than just going by the name or the brand of the college, I think it's also important to see a lot of things, because one set of bad admissions or one bad year of admissions can create a havoc. So whatever you talk about it in detail, right? So if for example you're talking about employee referrals, so I would extensively work on, so apart from working on, you know, job sites or vendors, or, you know, participating in job fairs, you know, one thing that I have really worked upon is you know, driving the employee referral policy. So before I joined, I think employee referral policy was more of a mail that was sent to candidates where they could refer people, and very few people were participating. We would hardly get maybe 3% or 5% of all vacancies being closed by employer referral. But I in my last job, or I felt that, employer referral is such a good way of hiring people where there is everybody mutually benefiting. We get better yield ratio because people know the role and they only recommend people who can get selected. So our initial effort of, figuring or, rejecting profiles becomes less. The quality of resumes are much better and better fitting. The second thing is the employee benefits, because there is they have an opportunity to earn extra, and we also benefit because it not only saves our time but also cost, because if the same thing would have been done by a vendor, right, they would have charged probably a higher percentage in terms of what is being paid to an employee, right? And then I really feel that it is about letting them know, marketing it internally branding it, and promoting it well. So I sat with the design team and I created posters and I created emailers which were not boring one-liners or two-liners with JDs. It was more in terms of email campaigns which were attractive. And I started talking. I created a leaderboard where people who were recommending more, and if more people were being hired or joined, then there were special gifts, or more buzz in terms of how things are happening. And because we were able to do this, I think over a period of time we saw this percentage increase from 3% to 7%, and also we were able to hire better candidates with less effort, right? So apart from working on all these things that I spoke to you about in terms of job sites where I was doing job postings or interacting with vendors, or doing job fairs and handling newspaper ads where walk-ins were happening, I have actually specialized in terms of driving this across. And I'm sure this is something that can be brought in various ways to any organization, or depending on what's happening in your organization, I'm sure I would be able to add value in one way or the other, right? So you also go about then highlighting what you have done, right? So remember, interviews are always about what you bring to the job. And I truly believe, in my 18 years, 19 years of career, this is what I have done. And I have seen people who have excelled and who have really done well in their respective jobs, is that they have brought this to their job, right? They have brought, so they have not taken a job in terms of, okay, 9, I have to log in, and 6, I have to leave, or 8, I have to leave. It is more in terms of how do I solve a problem that exists? How do I bring that element in? And being CHRMPs or being CPD members, if you're able to bring in your respective jobs, or even if you're a fresher, if you have this thought and approach that if you're solving a problem, you're not doing it necessarily for the organization, but it is also for your own exposure. I think that attitude really helps in terms of bringing these examples in an interview and making sense, isn't it? Right? Does that answer your question? Any doubts, any questions here? Okay, great. So the second set of 5 questions, how do you prepare for interviews with candidates? Very, very important question. I think this is a must. I always ask this question, any panel that I'm part of, to a recruiter, right? I always ask this, because preparation for interview is key. You will only be able to deliver well, right, if you prepare for interviews, right? And when I say prepare for interviews, it is not about giving interviews. I'm talking about taking interviews. You need to prepare to take an interview. Remember this, right? And that's when you would be able to bring that element in. That is when you would be able to, add that value that we are talking about, right? So very important question. And I think you really, if you are part of talent acquisition, remember, prepare for interview. Now, how do you prepare for interview? There are 2 or 3 stages to how you go about preparing for interview, right? One key element is that you need to know is that you know the job description really, really well, right? Also, you know what happens on ground really, really well. So if I have to answer this question, I'll tell them, I think preparation of interviewing a candidate starts much early, because I think it starts from the time we start looking for a candidate, because we really, I would really like to know the job description very, very well, right? And then I would like to have multiple conversations with hiring managers at different stages, right? In terms of what really the job looks like and what holds and what are the key skills, not only technical, but otherwise also, where they would look at and other inputs in terms of who has been performing in the team and how the person has been performing in the team, and people who are performing, what competencies and what traits and what belief system do they carry out, what values do they carry. Once I have this input, I think it's very, very important to structure them. So as part 2 of my preparation before I get into an interview room is to recall all that the discussion that have been and also list these key elements down so that I can structure my interview, right? So we do have an interview evaluation form, but a lot of times it may have few things missing. So either I update it or I add an additional sheet to the existing interview form so that I have more information about a candidate than what is needed. Then I go about conducting the interview. I think I'm prepared with what are the key areas that we as a team are looking at. And I would not only want to ask them generic questions, I get deeper in terms of behavioral questions or competency-based questions, where I look at figuring out the star, where how the person has faced the situation, the task, the action that the person has taken, and the result that it has shown, and the key motivations and key actions that otherwise has happened. And once I'm done with the interview, right, I would want to fill the sheet, give a 5-minute break between the next interview so that I can really write my observations well. Because if I'm conducting 15 to 20 interviews in a day, somewhere if at that point of time, right after the interview, if things are not jotted down or noted down or rated down well, then again I'm into a guessing game and I'm using my gut rather than evidence in terms of making a decision, because it may get confusing at times, right? So I do make notes even while the interview, and I summarize them after the interview. That is something that is part of my all interviews. And as I said, it is 3-stage process. First stage is about knowing the job well, talking to hiring manager, streamlining things, etc. Second is creating a structure and being ready with the kind of questions that I need to ask, and elicit a star, etc., which is being done during the interview. And then third is post-interview, where I give a break between gaps so that I'm able to jot things down well, so that I'm able to make better decisions. This is how I go about preparing and executing the interviews that I take, right? Yeah. Now it can get a little tougher. For example, have you interviewed a CEO? How did you prepare for it? And we will prepare if you have interviewing a very senior person, isn't it, right? And a lot of times we may not prepare if it is, but it's always good to prepare. It's always good to have these visibilities in terms of how things are happening, some alignment conversations happening, some discussions happening. You can also say that once the interview begins, I make sure that the candidate is comfortable, I'm clear, expectations are clear, and then I go ahead and start the interview. So you can also probably add one more line on that, but this is how you go about preparing for the interview to interview a candidate. Does that make sense? Any questions here? Any doubts? Any questions? Anyone? Okay. Great. Wonderful. And then comes in the next question. What steps do you take to help with the onboarding process? I think, again, give a very, very realistic answer. Tell them that, with the history of what the industry is seeing today in terms of candidates absconding and not even reporting on the onboarding day, I think it's very, very important that me, and being as a recruiter, the greatest help that I can do is stay in touch with the candidate and keep the team informed about who is onboarding and who is not. So I think that is one very, very key element that I really, really take care of. So even after closing the position, I think I make it a no point and I add that to the ATS or otherwise, to my work schedule, where I follow up with them 2 to 3 times so that I'm sure that these they are going to join in, right? I think one also very, very important thing is that onboarding process can be filled with surprises, right? So there can be things that candidate is not aware of and the onboarding team wants. So the second help that I do is that I make sure that based on how candidates go about missing certain information or carrying certain information. Everybody is aware of everything, right? So they know what documents they have to get, when they have to come, how they have to come, etc., etc., etc. And they know whom they are meeting, what is going to happen, how long the onboarding would take, etc. So I really set these expectations right, and I make sure that nothing is missed, right? A checklist is shared with the candidate, and they are aware of what they have to bring in. And if they are not bringing in something, then the team is aware of how exactly things would happen, right? So that is the second help that I do, right? So if you are part of onboarding, which means you're doing recruitment and onboarding both, there is much more to speak. But if you are more of a talent acquisition folk and your exposure to onboarding is less, these are these two things that I spoke about are largely giving you inputs in terms of that. But just in case you're also doing onboarding, then tell them that my job description does involve being actively involved in the onboarding process. And once the hiring is done, once a month, I'm for about 2 days, I'm involved with the onboarding process where right from document collection and giving it to the background verification team, welcoming them, to onboarding them, to making presentations, to introducing to the team, showing them the office, to talking about policies and procedures, and talking about anything and everything that otherwise they are part of from an HR aspect, is something that I'm involved with. So yes, in fact, onboarding is 20% of my role, and I doing it about 3 days a month in terms of its execution, and these are the things that I go about doing. So this is what you do if you are involved actively in the onboarding process. But just in case you're not involved, don't just answer that no, I'm not involved with onboarding process. Onboarding is taken care by someone else, right? So at least you show that you do something, at least in terms of onboarding, right? At least setting the expectation right, keeping in touch so there are less dropouts, making sure that enough information is, because if tomorrow a candidate comes, oh, nobody told me, recruiter didn't tell me, oh, I was not told. So there shouldn't be things like this. So you tell them that this is my involvement in terms of driving this across. Does this make sense? Any doubts, any questions, anyone? Anybody would like to ask anything? Okay. Sure, anyone, anything, right? Let me just, because we are now down to last 3 questions. Any question here? We have discussed questions like, what do you look for in a candidate? What is your greater accomplishment? What have you used any applicant tracking system? What is your experience with online recruiting? What resources do you use to find qualified candidates? How do you prepare for interviews with candidates? What steps do you take to help with the onboarding process? This is what we've discussed. Yes, Farooq, you can ask your doubt.
No, I don't have a doubt. I just thank you for the opportunity. I don't have a doubt. Actually, these things we do at times, but then we do not know how to express it. So thank you for the way you are explaining it out.
Right. Great, Farooq. Right. Wonderful. Thank you for that. That keeps us motivated. Yeah. Okay. Now, tell me about a time you missed out on a great candidate. What would you have done better? Again, a question I would always ask a recruiter, right? Because this invariably happens with everyone, right? And what is the key element? You have already missed a candidate, right? So what would a person do? It's such a real question to answer, right? So if this question is asked, I think, yes, I think recruitment is challenging, or talent acquisition is challenging, and there are so many times you miss on somebody fitting so well, and you have to again go from the beginning and start doing your entire math or effort again. And it can be so demotivating at times. So yes, there has been so many times that we have gone about missing on great candidates for various reasons, right? However, I think when I look back, I always feel that if we know why we are missing on these great candidates, and if we know we could probably utilize our effort and time better, right? So for example, if candidates are not joining after being made an offer, right? Or if there is a delay in the process where candidate is being made or accepts an offer somewhere else, or if it is a flaw from our end where a process is irrelevant, one of the selection processes being irrelevant is rejecting a good candidate who otherwise would have been a good fit. These are all common problems that we go about seeing, right? And what I have done mostly in the organization that I have worked for is that I have ensured that we do not miss on a candidate because of delay, right? And there is a lot of times delay that is not from our end, which can be from a different intra team. For example, it can be from operations team, or it can be from the hiring team, or it can be from the main person who has to give time in terms of being part of this interview. So one key element that I have highlighted always is that I have gone to basics. I have marked everybody in the mail. I have put the subject lines in the right manner, where I have gone about insisting that the candidate, we may miss on these two candidates because they are in a hurry, or we have to close this position, so that everybody is aware that they are hiring somebody who seems to be fitting in well, and at the same time we are able to meet the timelines and deadlines, and we are not able to miss on that, right? Similarly, if we have gone about there was one instance where we missed a candidate because of one of the selection tests where the person was not fitting in, but everybody else was quite assured that the person fits in well. So I think in my team meetings I did raise this up, that why do we need something like, let's say, a group discussion, or why do we need something like an aptitude test for this role, right? And if the particular test that was being conducted was not in line with that, and there was enough evidence to produce this across, I was able to then successfully let this selection process not impact in terms of the hiring decisions, and we were then able to hire some good candidates and not miss on them, right? Also, another thing that I have seen why we have gone about missing great candidates is because there is a basic level of expectation mismatch. It can be from any simple thing. For example, it can be a salary mismatch. It can be a work location mismatch, that it is work from office, not work from home, or the location is let's say different part of the city, not this part of the city because we have another office there. Or it can be there can be so many reasons why people may not be able to join in, because expectations initially will not clear, which got clear at a later stage, right? So I make sure that all the basic level of what matters to people in a role, whether it's salary, whether it's designation, whether it's the timeline, whether it's shifts, whether it's location, these are all very, very clearly communicated, right? And also getting affirmation from the candidate before moving ahead, because the same time then I can invest somewhere else on someone else to find a candidate. What's the point of having somebody good go through the entire process and then lose them on something which should have been be a filter criteria in the beginning of the process? So these are some of the things that I have gone about doing in terms of ensuring that we do not miss on great candidates, right? So you can go about, so again, a lot comes from your real experience, but I've just taken 2-3 scenarios so that it's not necessary that only multiple things can happen with different people, right? So I think one is expectations, one is as I said, the flaw in the hiring process. The other thing would be the delay in the hiring process. So what have you done in terms? These are all common reasons. So I've taken these 3 examples, but yes, there can be more examples. There can be less examples also that you are exposed to, but these are this would be an apt way of answering this, right? Okay, I'll just take these 2 questions as well, and then I'll probably ask you if you have any doubts. How do you stay connected with candidates? I think, so again, there are 2 parts to it. One is before making a decision, one is after making a decision, right? So just remember that. So the way to answer this is that I think staying connected with candidate is critical to any talent acquisition roles. I think we are in a role which is people facing. We are in a role which comes with a lot of responsibility, and also where candidates need to feel comfortable and also important, right? These are all job. I understand that these are all important traits for the role that I am in, right? So first key element is that the moment we see a good fit, and with the experience that I carry, I'm able to recognize that based on the resume, the job description, the initial conversation, etc. I think even if there is a delay in the hiring process, it's important that they have an update, right? Because they are actively looking, and then I'm sure that there are enough organizations in the world who are vouching, or looking for candidates like candidates that we are like must be, in demand. So staying in touch with the candidate keeps them aware that something is moving, right? So our organization did had multiple rounds, right? And each round there was a delay. Sometimes hiring processes or average hiring time went to 2 months or 3 months, right? So I'm keeping in touch with them in terms of what's happening, what's there, what was the update, how did it go. These are all elements that keeps them engaged. So just in case if there is a delay of more than 1 week or 10 days, I ensure that I leave a message or I give a call and have a quick chat in terms of setting the expectation right, also telling them that because it's a good place to work, we are very, very particular and a lot of things are happening. So things are going on. So one is about being in touch with the candidate before the hiring process. So they're not only aware, they see the sincerity, they see that the organization does need them and they want them and are sincere in terms of their effort, in terms of engaging with them, right? So this increases the candidate experience is much better in such a case, right? On the other hand, once a decision is made, I think it's equally important to then again be connected with the candidate, because again, as I said, that candidate is actively looking, and sometimes some conversation, some information, because normally interview, the notice period is anything between 1 to 3 months, right? So it's important that you are in touch, you are understanding where they're coming from, if anything they need, any information that they need, and get a feeler in terms of what's happening with them. And I'm sure that this gives also not only makes them feel important, also improves candidate experience, but also at the same time, also we have enough input in terms of who's joining and who's not joining, right? So I think I make sure that I stay connected both with qualified candidates before hiring decision and also with selected candidates post the hiring decision has been made, right? So that's how you go answering this. What screening processes are you familiar with? I think this is a very, very basic question again. Totally justifies it, things here. So tell them that there are various screening processes. I think we use ATS, a lot of things that filter out and they come in, but still, I think a lot of times finer details are not seen. So whenever I'm sourcing a resume or whenever I'm screening, I think one key element is I highlight in the job role something that is to have a must-have in resumes, and that is one thing that is part of the screening process. And once the screening is through and the selection process is scheduled, then again selection processes does take care of various screenings. So for example, to judge somebody's team working, we have team games which we make them play. For understanding personality, we have personality tests and assessments that they have to undergo. We have multiple rounds of interview in terms of 2 to 3 technical rounds and 2 behavioral rounds before a decision is made, right? So or there is work sample test that is given. So I'm aware of various things in terms of, for example, if somebody's cognitive ability has to be tested, how it can be tested, maybe by conducting an aptitude test if the job requires it. If somebody's exposure to work is conducted, we can go about conducting work sample test, and that is something that can be done. And then you can give examples. For example, if we are hiring a data analyst or a HR analyst, then we would like to him to successfully predict based on previous data what the iteration would look like, and that is something that we would include that, right? So elements like this. So you tell them things like this, and then tell them. Then and once interview comes in, then I think I've been exposed to, or I'm certified in BI from CHRMP, where I know what behavior interviewing, or I'm a HRBP certified candidate where I understand how the behavior interviewing works and how STAR is gauged and implemented. So these are all screening processes. So one set of screening processes more in terms of sourcing and screening and clearing, which is more in terms of recruitment elements, and the other part is of selection, where BI comes into picture, and other assessments come into picture in terms of being able to make better decisions, or interviews in terms of making better decisions. This is how you go about answering this question, right? Does this make sense, guys? Any doubts, any questions, anyone, anything anybody would like to ask here? Great. Anyone, any doubts, any questions? Wonderful, great. So yes, so this is what we have discussed. We have discussed about 10 questions. Now remember, there are a lot of questions which may be asked from a generic perspective, right? Why do you want to work for this company? Tell me about yourself. How did you get into this role? What do you bring to the job? All these questions have been covered in the session 1. So please go and watch the session 1 recording. Because I'm telling you this because last session of this series will happen next week. So what I'll do is, once I'm done answering these questions, what I'll do is that I'll take all your personal questions that you would want to ask me in terms of that. So if you've already seen session 1, either that would have been answered already, or you would still want some amount of additional information, etc. And I would really be able to then add value in terms of how is the best way to answer this question, right? So bit of a time, it's hardly, maybe 45 minutes of watch, because 15 minutes would have gone in terms of recapping or, answering what people were asking. But just go ahead and watch that, because you'll be in a much, much better position to gauge and absorb more from this, and also session 2. So a quick small assignment is for you to probably watch session 1 and session 2. Even if it's 1.5 speed, just go ahead and watch it and then come back, because you have already attended session 3, and then we will be talking about session 4, where we would be getting deeper into the topic and we'll be taking advanced TA questions, right? Okay, any doubts, any questions again? Okay, great. So please do leave a feedback. Your feedback is very, very important. It hardly takes 3 to 5 minutes, but we have meetings on those feedbacks, and we want to improve our delivery. So please give your feedback, and that would really help us, deliver better services to you. Yes, Farooq, go ahead and ask. Farooq, you have any doubts? Any questions?
Yes, no, Mr. Animesh, this is just out of context question. What about Tableau? I was wondering about Tableau. Do you have any special sessions for Tableau and all?
You are part of the HRA?
Yeah.
You've taken HR certificate, the HR analytics certification?
Yeah. Vijaya has spoken to you about it, yeah.
Yes, it will happen, Farooq. You would have a schedule that would be shared with you. When did you start, Farooq?
I had logged in 3 months back, okay, and now I recently upgraded myself. But I'm going slow because I work on weekends and all. So
don't worry about that. I think Tableau would be scheduled, and it would be, the schedule will be shared with you very soon. And sure, if you have the schedule for HRA for the cohort that you went to, it would have been updated. Just in case it's not updated, it would be updated soon. Don't worry.
I'd like to have a one-to-one chat with you sometime. Anytime you're free, maybe via Telegram or anything. Is that okay?
Yeah, that's absolutely fine. Please feel free to drop me a message.
Yeah. Okay. Yeah. Thank you.
Okay.
Thank you. Have a great evening. Yeah.
Everyone, have a great evening, everyone. Anybody, any doubt again, just in case? Okay, so I'll see you guys next Wednesday, 8 p.m. Indian time, for the concluding session of the series of how to crack talent acquisition interviews and how to, and these are all questions that are from top-notch companies. So once you have visibility to this, I'm sure that you would be able to do that really well, right? Thank you so much for attending today's session. It was a pleasure interacting with all of you. Have a great evening and a week ahead. Yeah. Thank you.